is. All right, Jay, good to see you again today.
What's going on, Paul?
Well, let's go into Romeo and Juliet, the next act. But before we do, let's open with a poem, as we are wont to do. I got a poem for us today. And this one I started quoting in the woods 2 nights ago. And my son and I were out for a walk after dark with the dog and just chatting. I looked up in the sky, and there were the stars. And I think it relates to our star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet. So let me throw it out there. This is one of the lesser-known poems by Robert Frost. He's got some very philosophical poems, and this is one of them called Stars. It's one of my favorites. How countlessly they congregate o'er our tumultuous snow, which flows and shapes as tall as trees when wintry winds do blow. As if in keenness for our fate, our faltering few steps on to white rest and a place of rest, invisible at dawn. And yet, with neither love nor hate, those stars, like some snow white, Minerva's snow white marble eyes, without the gift of sight. Stars by Robert Frost.
I love that last moment in the poem. That's great.
It's a nice turn.
Yeah.
I like that he evokes, you go out at night and look up in the stars, and there they are, all staring down at us as if they're interested in our faltering few steps on. Why should they care?
It reminds me of Yeats's poem, When You Are Old and Gray and Full of Sleep. It ends with the stars. I don't know, maybe I'll bring that for next time. It's not the same thing, but it reminds me of it.
Yeah, that might be good. Might be good to hear. And yet, with neither love nor hate, those stars, like Minerva's snow white marble eyes without the gift of sight. They can't see. They can't see either.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was thinking about it. I'm not sure exactly how to put that together with Romeo and Juliet, but I'll just throw it out there as an evocative opener.
Yeah, that's nice.
All right, we're on to Act 4. Not one of the bigger acts. Act 3 that we did last time is a lot more of an act. But it's Act 4. We're going act by act, and so we'll do it. We'll do our duty here. Then we'll hit Act 5 next, and maybe do a wrap up too. So we're in Act 4 today. This might be quick, but we're going to do. I mean, are you still on to do our three questions?
I have done my homework like a good teacher.
All right, done it in time. You didn't do it just like,
or at least Wikipedia said I did my homework like it. No, I did.
Great. So we'll do our questions. The obvious and crucial, the subtle but poignant, and then the lingering or it may be nagging questions that you have, whichever way it goes. I don't know. You want to start us off, Jay? Act 4, Romeo and Juliet. How do we start talking about this?
I think I was telling you at school today that I had a little bit of time last night, and it was weird. I reread Act 4 a while ago, and then I was just poking around my bookshelf, and in the commentaries I have of Romeo and Juliet, Act 4 is ignored or skimmed over pretty clearly.
You couldn't find much on it.
And I wasn't looking to cheat, Paul. I'll just be honest with you. I wasn't looking for how
let's just stop right here.
My homework. What I've always said. I mean, no, but so I think there's plenty to talk about. I think it's Act 4 of a Shakespeare play, which means he's had to find a way to descend quickly to the end, in this case to a tragedy.
Yeah.
But things have to be set in place to move quickly now. The momentum has to happen.
Yeah.
So I think there's one line I want to point out and then a soliloquy I want to point out.
All right, before you jump into that, can I ask you a question based on something you said?
Yeah.
How much commentary do you read on this? I don't know, in general or in this play. How do you incorporate that into your head?
I think as a younger teacher who maybe because of insecurity and inexperience probably felt like he had to be smart in front of the kids, and that was like a concern,
Yeah.
I probably thought about it too much. I think my first job when I teach something, particularly a thing I haven't taught before, is to read it really closely and honor my questions and journal and just, pay attention to the text itself. Because if I start with commentary, I feel the same when you assign research papers. If you don't have the kids think seriously first about what they believe to be there, the research paper is just going to be a collection of other people's thoughts, kind of like nerd Tetris, just fitting stuff in,
Yeah, right.
But I do think while I'm teaching, Romeo and Juliet to ninth graders, they don't have to know what Harold Bloom at Yale thought, or Marjorie Garber at Harvard thinks, or Harold Goddard or Isaac Asimov. I name the big ones, right?
Right.
For me, it just kind of fills in the rooms in my imagination to know what these really smart people, how they read.
Right.
Because they see resonances and echoes where I don't necessarily. A lot of times it's just they point out questions I may not have thought of. But it's not necessarily to, like I said, when I was younger, it was just to be smart,
right,
to feel confident,
right.
But I think it's good. I mean, I think my thoughts about Romeo and Juliet are valid.
Right.
What's in the text needs to be. Here's the big thing. I need to spend more time with the play than I do with other people talking about the play.
Yeah.
Number one. Right. But I do want to. I find that certain readers of Shakespeare helpful to me.
Yeah.
And I revisit them pretty regularly, but without this obsessive feeling of I need them to unlock it. I just like to notice. I like to see what they notice.
Right.
That's all.
It's I'm like I came down on this. My approach in the classroom is I heard myself giving this speech to students over and over again. Stop looking at helps. Don't look at Spark. I don't care about anything else you can find online. I want to hear what those people have to say. I want to hear what we have to say. I want your, like encouraging them to bring their authentic, unadorned reading to the room. And so I'm asking them to do this, to walk through this without, quoting. And so then I thought, I think I should do the same thing too. If I think it's true for them, like there's a way in which, I felt like that applied to me. So me too, early on in my career, I felt like I had to read all the things, but I stopped doing that, and I just read and read. And I've purposely avoided looking up some things for years, more than 10 years. I have some questions from the Odyssey, which maybe we'll do in the future. I hope we do, that I just am not going to look up because I can't wait to to land on something at least in my own, in my own head.
Sure.
And I don't want to lose that discovery. I don't want to lose that question to someone else, who can answer.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw this out. I think this should be a separate podcast.
Yeah.
Episode of you start a book and you're a teacher. What's the order of operations? You know what I mean? What comes first? Really?
Right.
I don't think this gets discussed. Those of you listening who are teachers, how many meetings have you been to in the last 10 years where this thing is discussed?
Yeah.
Like, how do you organize how you think about a book in a way that's authentic yet honors the expertise of other people?
I've never been there. And
so that might be really good to do.
And that would be good. And that, something that really inspired me. I went up to Phillips Exeter Academy to their summer institute years ago, and it was on the Harkness method, a Socratic discussion thing, right? But they sent us into a math room, to see, we're humanities teachers. It was a humanities summer institute, but they sent us in a math room and a science room to see how this plays out. How do you do Socratic discussions on, cell structure or something? And it actually was brilliant. But one of the things I noticed was a side note was that they showed us a book that was, if I'm remembering this right, that Algebra 1 at Phillips Exeter is a set of problems. It is a little book that they copy themselves on a photocopy machine with a staple folded in half. And you could hold it up and say, this is Algebra 1. This is a set of representative problems, 5 of each of the kinds. And when you can solve these problems, then you are Algebra 1 competent, And you may have to solve, scores of related problems, do back, whatever. And that actually inspired me in my approach to literature. Yeah. There's nothing to Google really if you're trying to learn algebra and learn to do these representative problems. And same with the books. There are sets of books, strong books, whatever books your teachers are putting in front of you are probably really strong text. That's the set of problems. And when you can think through these and understand them and appreciate them in a way that's represented to you, then you're thinking literarily, right? You're ninth grade competent for for literature, 11th grade competent. I don't know. I was kind of using that as a model. I really like that.
I think I've gone all over the place in my career on this question.
Yeah.
And and I always have to be aware that what excites me isn't necessarily what my students need to hear right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is one of the benefits of a dialogue-based situation.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're inviting them in. Like, you're asking them to do it. And you're like, all right, you had to read X last night. All right, let's go. I want to hear it. You know,
I think with the most difficult books I teach, I'm not good at that. So that's something I'd like to. Let's promise each other to have an episode.
All right, let's do this. Yeah, we're
for
getting
this
off into this
because I want to think about this more.
Yeah,
I think that's really good.
Because I'm not. Yeah, I like to look into and think through the other options. I know where I've landed, but I haven't thought a lot about the things I'm not doing. You know,
yeah. Well, maybe we can do, like, instead of theorizing, pick a poem.
Yeah.
Kind of a great poem. Pick 2 great poems and that we don't know really well. Like, we'll promise each other.
It's kind of cold.
And one will do inside out, and one will do sort of traditional guided experts.
Yeah.
Advice. And maybe we can process how that went for us.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud.
I think that'd be nice.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
All right. So Act 4. I mean,
this, by the way, for those listening, is exactly what Paul and my day is like. So
the only difference is the bell hasn't rung. There aren't kids sitting in the room with no teacher.
We share a classroom, and there's many classes that start with Paul and I still talking about the books.
Right. We just tell them to be quiet. Sit still.
And they really mind waiting because they're dying for my class to start.
Yeah.
They're really frustrated. You know.
All right. Act 4. We have other people waiting right now. Podcast list. And hey, I counted them up. The Act 4 does have the fewest lines. It doesn't have the fewest scenes. It has the fewest lines. 412 lines.
That's pretty small.
So yeah, there's we might be able to sum this up. All right, but you were saying you had 2 places we were going. Where are we going?
So Act 4, Scene 1, I found this pretty interesting. We've been talking a lot about Juliet's agency, Juliet's strength. And there's just a little tiny line. Friar Lawrence has this insane plan. And it strikes me that Friar Lawrence isn't trapped. Friar Lawrence has options. So right now, you know, Juliet is forced in a corner. She has to marry Paris on Thursday. She's already married. That's an issue.
Right.
Friar Lawrence could fess up and go to, you know, the Capulets and explain what happened. Obviously, it wouldn't be the same play, and that's not the point. But I'm just saying, logically, from his perspective, he could do that. So instead, he has the 42-hour potion. You know, we're trying to get COVID vaccines. I wonder if the 42-hour potion is available at the pharmacy. So anyway, it's obviously it's not like she's read the play before. So will this kill me? Do I trust this guy?
Right.
So here's this thing that makes her look dead. She's going to be put in a vault with all of her dead relatives. It's horrifying. One line response, line 123. Give me, tell me not of fear. So she repeats the demand and then just basically. So I just think that's a really, really interesting. She's a part of the decision and is operating like completely without fear. So I don't want to go on and on about it. I just thought that was cool. But in terms of the essential point, I think it's Act 4, Scene 3, one of the longest speeches of the play, I believe.
Okay.
It's Juliet's soliloquy. It's right after her mother and the nurse exit. Juliet has a potion. And I'm going to read just key parts of it if that's okay.
That'd be great.
So it's line 15, Act 4, Scene 3. Juliet's alone. Farewell. Okay, now here we go. God knows when we shall meet again.
Yeah.
I have a faint cold fear thrills through my veins that almost freezes up the heat of life. I'll call them back again to comfort me. Nurse, what should she do here? My dismal scene I needs must act alone. Come, vile. It's that great Shakespeare stuff where there's tons of moments in Shakespeare where it looks like there's improv, like she's thinking this.
Yeah.
There's dashes and there's pauses, right? What if this mixture do not work at all? Shall I be married then tomorrow morning? No, this I shall forbid. Lie thou there. What if it be a poison, which the friar subtly administered to have me dead? She's asking all the right questions, all by herself.
Right.
Lest in this marriage he should be dishonored because he's married me before to Romeo. I fear it is. And yet methinks it should not, for he hath still been tried a holy man. How? If when I am laid into the tomb I wake before the time that Romeo come to redeem me? There's a fearful point. Shall I not then be stifled in the vault? To whose foul mouth no healthsome air breathes in, and there die strangled before my Romeo comes? Or, if I live, is it not very like the horrible conceit of death and night, together with the terror of the place, as in a vault, an ancient receptacle where for this many hundred years the bones of all my buried ancestors are packed? Where bloody Tybalt, yet but green in earth, lies festering in his shroud? where, as they say, as some hours of the night, spirits resort, alack, alack. It is not like that I, so early waking, what with loathsome smells and shrieks like mandrakes torn out of the earth, that living mortals hearing them run mad. Or if I wake, shall I not be distraught, environed with all these hideous fears, and madly play with my forefathers' joints, and pluck the mangled Tybalt from his shroud, and in this rage, with some great kinsman's bone, as with a club, dash out my desperate brains?
Yeah.
Oh, look, methinks I see my cousins go seeking out Romeo, that did spit his body upon a rapier's point. Stay, Tybalt, she's seeing a ghost. It's Juliet has moments like this. There's no other moments in the play like that. Romeo never thinks like this.
Yeah.
It's one of those Shakespeare moments where he has the significant actor think all the thoughts she has to think because the audience is thinking them. What if the potion does this? What if the potion doesn't work and you got to get married the next day to this idiot? What if you wake up and you're surrounded by dead people and you're going to suffocate? And then it goes into the specificity of the bones and the joints and the rotting and the smells. And I just find not only her strength and fortitude in agreeing with the friar, but that she doesn't mindlessly just take the potion, that there's a moment of thought and a series of thoughts.
Right.
And Juliet's thinking is, to me, the most interesting thing in Romeo and Juliet. So that speech was the essential point to me. There is no doubt in my mind she's ready to roll now.
Yeah. And that moment could have been missed. You could have just had her drink. I mean, that could have happened off stage, right?
Yeah.
Drinks the
They got married off stage.
Like the marriage, right?
Right.
They don't have the
Yeah.
marriage. That doesn't happen. Their honeymoon happens off stage, you know. But instead, it's a moment that, as you say, that the drama takes advantage of to put Juliet's consciousness, her mind, on stage for us, which is what we want. Every time you hear it, you know, you want to hear more.
Yeah.
That's good. So obvious and crucial. Juliet's conscious. Juliet's thinking. Juliet's able to contemplate. You know, mine was really related too, and I kind of went to the same places. But I put it as the obvious, trying to put it in like a pithy, obvious thing that still is striking, obvious and crucial, is that Juliet, and so I put it in this way, Juliet is not afraid to die. Juliet is not afraid to die. And that's in the lines, right? That's just, like, yes, of course. But that's a crucial point. One, in the way that you laid it out, and she has... And it's not a childish lack of fear of death. That is one who hasn't thought about what death means. Like you said, she goes through the things. I could be a tool. Friar Lawrence could be using me and just killing me off. How horrible to die that way. Or this horror scene that's painted in the sepulcher of her like waking up and going insane and pulling out a bone and beating herself in the head.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's almost like a zombie movie scene. It's just it's grotesque. So that could be me. I could go that route. So she's not afraid to die, and she's thought about it. Give me, and she say, she's on it. Also, she shows up at Friar Lawrence's with a knife, right? And says, "Don't tell me there's a problem. Tell me there's a solution, or else me and my friend here are going to solve the problem. The umpire, right, will umpire between these options here." And then when Friar Lawrence says, "Oh, I have a solution for you, as long as you're not too afraid to take it," and she's like, "Don't tell me about fear. Tell me not. Tell me not about fear." So that I think is the obvious. I think it's crucial because what she has that you can dig into is she has an understanding of the conditions under which life is no longer worth living. That is. That's a deep thought.
Because all the dominoes that have to fall for this to work out, right? You have messengers, potions, funerals that later end up being a rescue, and you have to flee to the town next door, to Mantua. I mean, as we learn with the plague that blocked, not to spoil Act 5, Romeo and Juliet, but, I mean, so many things have to work out.
Right. Right. But she's so horrified, and I like the opening lines too of Act 4 where she Romeo, Juliet in love is sweet. Juliet not in love is kind of harsh.
Right.
She gives it to Paris. It's awesome. Her lines to him of just rejection. And there was a couple lines that seemed really poignant to me in that. Paris says, she's witty. Friar Lawrence said, "Are you come to confess to me?" Well, to answer that, I would or Paris says that, "Come you to make confession?" She says, "Well, to answer that, I'd have to confess to you. Like, I have something to confess. I'm not telling you. Who are you?"
Exactly.
"Well, don't deny to him that you love me. I will confess to you that I love him."
Right. And the other day, I in a previous podcast, I mentioned that when they early on in their relationship, numerous times Romeo and Juliet are finishing each other's sentences. They're building sonnets in their speech. They're finishing 10-line blank verse. And I'm looking at Act 4, Scene 1. And you can just look down the page, and Paris has a line: "Happily met, my lady and my wife." He's so lame. Juliet: "That may be, sir, while I may be a wife." They're just speaking in like blunt, literal syllables.
Yeah.
They're not reading each other.
Yeah.
They're not finishing each other's thoughts.
No.
They're not connected in any way emotionally. No. But Shakespeare's smart enough to make that disconnection clear in the way the lines are built.
Yeah.
Also.
Which
I think you can feel watching a good performance of it.
Yeah. She's almost replying with the denial of everything he says. They're almost contradictory statements, not quite, but pretty close.
Yeah.
But I like that at the end, there's a self-effacing line. And one thing I've liked about and appreciate about Juliet is her connection to reality. And another colleague in our department has pointed out, he thinks that in all of Shakespeare, what's really at stake is what's real and what's fake, what's not real. We were talking about that in the context of Hamlet. But he feels like it's here, and Juliet is connected to it. I like in line 34, she says, "That is no slander, sir, which is a truth. And what I spake, I spoke it to my face." All right? And what she had said is that the tears hadn't much harmed her face. She wasn't that pretty, to begin with. And then Paris takes that ownership line: "Thy face is mine, and thou hast slandered it." And she says, "Well, maybe so, because the face isn't mine. It's not my own." And that to me is so much of what's at stake here is her taking being, what is hers, and being herself and being her own. And I think that's that point of the conditions under which life is not worth living for her. If she can't make good on her vows, if she's forced to play a role that violates her conscience, violates her maybe something other than conscience, this sense of committed love, that she's experienced in Romeo, she's not going to do it. She's not going to just make a deal with bad luck, and roll on with life, because just being alive is the goal.
And being alive in Verona, I wonder, that's really interesting, the notion of her being kind of someone who's fighting for authenticity, for what the truth is. It's probably a world where rivalries go unexplained, hatred and murder in the street. We're not really sure where it's born. We know it's an ancient grudge. Her father is a very impulsive person. I might mention him later. It might be the sort of thing where she's exactly the kind of person who's going to really prioritize authenticity and truth, because there's so little of it in her life. Yeah. It's like someone raised in a totalitarian regime. They're going to look for something that's, authentic.
And the authentic thing is herself, is their selves. We talked about this last time. Romeo's self she'll swear by, and is herself that she won't violate. It doesn't take sort of cheap shots at the constructs of society, which are always there to be shot at. And it reminded me of, I read this book over break. Another of our colleagues suggested, Convenience Store Woman.
Yeah, I have it. I haven't read
by
it.
Sayaka Murata, if I'm saying that right.
You liked it, right?
I liked it a lot. It's a Japanese novel, just recently translated into English, presumably. This is, I think, just recently translated into English. This was a novel about a woman who plays a cog in the great wheel of society. You very easily see it this way. But the twist in the novel is that she belongs there. She's evidently, openly that thing. She works at a convenience store, and she's in her 30s and has always just worked at a convenience store, but she loves it there, and it's a world that she thrives in and enjoys in all the ways that are played out. But I thought of this like, but what you walk away from with her is you do not pity her or feel sorry for her because she is herself. She is and they build all these other people around her who have better jobs, more important people with more important lives.
I have to
money,
read it, Paul,
and all this, right? But she's more developed than them.
Yeah.
You know, while being superficially, socially beneath them. I see a little connection there with Juliet.
Yeah,
she's going to hang on to that tiny thing.
Yeah.
It's not tiny. Well, it's not a tiny thing. Even if the construct, so being subject to her father, subject to Paris, the marriage, all these constrictions, fine. But what she has to preserve is the truth in herself. And that's what she's willing to. That's what she's afraid of.
Yep.
She's not afraid of death. There's something worse than that. Is the loss of the only thing that matters.
Right.
I don't know. I like evocations of that.
That's hard absolutely.
That's hard to put on the page in a believable way for me. And so
Dickens has a line. I think it's in Great Expectations, but I could be wrong about There's nothing that a young person perceives more keenly than an injustice.
Yeah.
And those of us with kids know, if you deny him the fifth Oreo, all hell breaks loose, right?
Right.
But she has a really keen sense, I think. And there's no speech about this in the play. It's like one of those great unwritten scenes. But I like what you're saying. And about her, it probably wasn't common for 13-year-olds to, critique adult society. This isn't the world where that happens. But you wonder if you gave her truth serum, tell us what you think about the rivalry. If you had to guess between the two families, where did it start? Yeah. Or what do you think about who loves you the most of all the adults in your life? And what
right.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
So
those are malicious questions from the present that we want to pose back to the past.
Exactly.
To impose ourselves on it,
But in terms of teaching the play, teaching teenagers, if they can see, I don't think this is the only thing one does with something like Romeo and Juliet, but if you have students in front of you who are not inclined to try to even enter into this book outside of passing quizzes on it, to show them that the trap that they're in as 14-year-olds, because they have limited agency, is in any way similar to a fictitious 13-year-old Italian girl. Yeah. If they can make that connection, lots of things are possible imaginatively. Yes. So I don't know,
including the continuation of our chosen field of study,
including our families having health insurance. Exactly right.
Exactly. That literature is real and that works.
Thank God.
All right. I like that as opener. I don't know. What'd you find? There's not a lot, as I said, there's 412 lines here, but as you sift through them, is there something subtle?
Yeah, I have a weird one.
Oh, good.
This is really weird, but I love it. I love that he does this. It's Act 4, Scene 5.
Okay.
I don't love that Juliet dies, but it's right after they discover Juliet's body. And there's a series of wildly over-the-top, oh, sad day, oh.
Yes, right.
And I just wrote on Mars of the book, where were these people, a week ago?
Right.
You didn't love your kid enough to... Anyway.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there's a comic relief scene, but I think it's more than that.
Oh, good. I want to hear you talk about this because I was rereading that and just kind of like,
I
just kind of skipped over it. I thought I should think about this, but I'm not going to. So you got to give us something.
So, and I might be overreading this. It's an occupational hazard.
Right.
But so in the middle of Act 4, Scene 5, line 106, it says, enter Peter.
Right.
Actually, before that, let me find where they enter. So they enter, and the first musician in line 102 says, we may put up our pipes and be gone.
Yeah.
Now, what's being said, I'm a musician. That's my other job. I get paid to do that. My wife and I sing at a lot of weddings and funerals and baptisms. We've done, and when you're working a wedding or working a funeral, everybody in the room, it's the most important day of their life. And to be perfectly honest, you cannot get emotionally involved if you're working because you're working.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? You can't get sucked into the vortex of the emotions because you have a song to sing in 2 minutes. You have to make sure your guitar's in tune. You have to make sure that Shakespeare I think because of his upbringing, his dad was in sales, right? His dad was a glover.
Yeah.
He knew lots of different kinds of people.
Right.
And this is a pattern in the play,
Okay.
pattern in Shakespeare in general, that you'll be in the middle of this vital, crazy core moment, and he'll remember who might be on the outskirts of town doing something. He knows that if there's a wedding being planned, of course there would be musicians. Of course there would be. Mm-hmm. Of course. And here the musician says the logical thing, oh, bride's dead, we'll leave. Right? That makes sense. But then the other musician says the case may be amended. And then they start talking about the songs they're going to play at the Merry Dump, which is, Dump is a sad song, Merry Dump is a paradox. What they're trying to figure out is, and this is what I love, I don't talk about this scene with the kids because it's not the first time you read Romeo and Juliet, this probably isn't the most vital thing.
Right.
The musicians remind us that there's a world around every tragedy that's just making money, right? They're there for a gig. And you know what happens when the bride dies? The set list changes. It's now going to be a wedding, a funeral thing maybe, right? Yeah. It's not vital to the play. No one's going to be writing it. But I just think of, the porter at Macbeth's gate. Of course, there's probably going to be a guy drunk opening the gate. And he's going to say some things. Of course. Now, the king just was assassinated. Why are we thinking about that? You know why? Because there's other people in the world. Yeah. That's why. And Shakespeare's eyes are always there. And the apotheosis of this, the best example of this in all of Shakespeare is 5-1 of Hamlet with the Gravedigger. Yeah. One of my favorite characters in all of literature. But, you forget.
And a great
someone has
moment.
to do that job. All these corpses and tragedies, that's the only play, I think, where you have a guy digging the actual hole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he has purpose and intellect and complaints. And so I just love it. And I looked. I can't find a production where this is included.
Yeah, that occurred to me. I don't teach this. I don't read it.
It's always edited out because you don't need it. Yeah. You don't technically need it. I just want to point out to people who are wondering what's surprising in Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. Why do Shakespeare? Why do we care about him more than so many other people? There's a million answers to that question. I would argue one of the answers to the question is that his eyes are both on the core of stories and on the margins of whatever kingdom or village or place you're at. He sees everything.
It's so good. That's a great perspective. And that's a good take on this, like what do you do with it? But maybe start by feeling it out and then, make this connection across Shakespeare that he's looking in the corners.
Think of COVID, which is the world we've occupied for quite some time.
Yeah, too long.
And I'm not even going to be dramatic.
Yeah.
But I know somebody who owns a pizza shop, and since restaurants have closed, she has this perfect thing where she makes great pizza, just takeout, and she's making a killing. Yeah. I shouldn't say it that way since I'm talking about COVID, but obviously she has a good heart. Obviously she would rather not have COVID. But you know what else this is? A job opportunity.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm sorry, but
it's an economy.
Think of Zoom. Wouldn't you like to be an executive at Zoom?
Yeah, who ever heard of Zoom?
Right.
Before a year ago.
Right.
And now
it's the bane of our existence
if
now.
I hear it again, I'm going to die.
Right. But I mean, the people that work for Zoom obviously didn't see this coming, years ago. But so anyway, I just find I love that about Shakespeare, that you never know who's going to have a voice next ever.
And it's not a throwaway in that sense. It's actually funny, I noticed a lot. What say you, James Soundpost?
That's like on a Midsummer Night's Dream.
Talking to each other. Yeah. Hang him, Jack. Come on, let's go.
They're kind of street musicians, right, who are hired to play the gig, and the set list changed, so they're all like, oh, man,
We'll hang out for the food. Let's go.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I've been in conversations, not at the end of Shakespearean tragedies, but where something happens and there's a last minute change, and it's this super emotional thing for maybe a family. Like my wife and I did a wedding, and moments before the wedding, an old lady came up and said, my brother-in-law, who the funeral was for, I should say, it was a funeral. He danced at his wedding to this song, and do you know it? And we ended up, we knew it and we played it. But to me, I'm doing a service for X amount of dollars, and I have to be dispassionate.
Right.
These musicians,
Yeah.
they're not reading Romeo and Juliet. They're wandering around. They get hired to do a gig.
Yeah.
The gig changed.
Yeah. Bride woke up dead.
It's this play we love and get sucked into, and we're rooting for people, and there's fate and hatred and sword fights. But there's a whole world that doesn't care about these people at all.
And it's just funny.
It's so true.
And it's almost a taunting of skill and power too as a writer,
Yeah.
to be able to throw this scene in and control.
Love it.
So in control.
That's a good way of putting it.
So in control. And I love that. All right, that's good. That's good. Subtle but poignant, and it's something maybe that you could do is take that point that you're making and look throughout, like use it as a filter to reread the play, and to see how it's looking into the corners and other scenes, and so that's valuable. That's really valuable. I've got I didn't stray too far in my subtle but poignant from my obvious but crucial. The subtle builds off of the obvious. The obvious, I said Juliet's not afraid to die. My subtle is I was thinking about the point. Well, what is she afraid of? Then what drives her? Because Friar Lawrence plays off of this. The only way he's gonna send a poison potion home with Juliet is if there's something really desperate here to fix. And she's got a knife in one hand. So in a way, she's got a gun to his head. I feel like kind of drives this a little bit because she's going to go either way. Even that night before the speech you read, she lays the knife down beside her and says, "What if this doesn't work?" Well, right. Oh, don't worry about it. I got this. So I'm not going to marry, Paris either way. But I just found two lines, that I don't know. Again, not to get. I take him kind of seriously. Page 181, when she comes to that's Act 4, Scene 1. Right there at the end of the page in the Folgers edition here, it's line 66. Yep. Good to know issue of the true honor bring, but be not so long to speak. I long to die, if that thou speakest not of a remedy. Why does she long to die? So my first point was that she's not afraid to die. She longs to die. Then 183, next page over. When she says line like 88, and I will do it without fear, I will do it without doubt, to live an unstained wife to my sweet love. And so what does she dread? What is she afraid of? I think in the subtle thing here, maybe it's not all that subtle, is that what she dreads is this this violation of her marriage vows. I think a lot of times, and why it seems subtle to me, I guess, is because I think a lot of times I took it as like desperation to be with Romeo. But I think what I'm seeing now that's subtler is the other side of that exact same coin, which is to not be with Paris, to in no way, like she's looking down the barrel of having to do something that she does not see a good way out. At all, and she will not do it.
The most comically boring character
going
ever.
To do, which I waver between feeling sorry for the boring, Paris, and then in that scene, that we read when he's at Friar Lawrence is there in 4-1, and you think, this guy's a punk. Dude.
Yeah.
But he's a cog, talking about a cog in the machine of society. He doesn't have a distinct identity. He's just rolling on with what with what Juliet's dad is rolling on with, and what just moving along. And that's the great crime. I think it's the great sin that in this, if there is one in this play, it's certainly not suicide. It's not being a self, not being a person. And Paris is just not, and Juliet is not going to do that. She is not going to violate her marriage, and I guess that's to live an unstained wife, to my sweet love. So she's not going to take that on. So I think that was the subtle. I guess the subtle. The subtle point was well, what is she afraid of? And it's not of not being with Romeo exactly, but it's of being with Paris,
of doing what everybody's expecting her to do.
Yeah, of just rolling on with it and not in her own weakness, like we experienced, we fall into just doing what everyone expects you to do out of, just whatever. It's just easier or cowardice or something. But but out of force, she's being forced into this in this tight little chess match, that she's a piece on. But she pulls herself out of that. Thus I'll defy these stars that Romeo's going to say later, that she's doing that same thing. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe the subtle point is what exactly is her dread. It's not that nightmarish horror scene in the sepulcher on the bier. It's the
wrong life.
Yeah, it's the wrong life. Yeah. And for all that is not in her power, that is fully in her power.
Yeah, good point.
To avoid. Though only in a macabre and horrific way.
Right.
It's fully in your power if you're willing to stab yourself to death.
Right.
So,
Yeah, therapists in Verona at the time would have done very well. So Friar Lawrence said what to you? He gave you what? He made you go where? Let me get another notebook.
Let's just back up.
I think we'd be a mandated reporter.
Yeah. Right.
Some student came up to us and said, I just I have this guy telling me, 42 hours. How about that?
Yeah. So you got to be careful about this as we're teaching this literature. It does remind me of that story of our other colleague. We seem to be mentioning a lot of colleagues today, who read with his class, was it Walden Pond or Self-Reliance or something, American Lit, and under the inspiration of which, and this is a true story. Remember that? And he just left.
Yeah, he just left. I mean, that's really reading closely.
He just got in the car and ran away from home and drove. He's going to live. He's going to go be
We're going to be careful. Those of you who are teachers, pay attention to your reading list. No, there's so many. I mean, Shakespeare is just over and over again, like, don't do this at home. Please do not try this at home.
Right. Right.
What about nagging questions, Paul?
Well,
just things that are hanging on.
I don't know. I guess maybe I ask about Friar Lawrence. Should he carry on the ruse at this point?
Yeah.
Should he have carried on with that?
He has choices.
Yeah. And he's smart and powerful. Could he have told Juliet a different story? And pulled her, back from the edge.
Or gone to her father and said, "Look, she's already married. It's done. It's done."
How about calling it right then? Just blow the whistle. Throw in the towel. The fight's over. This is getting way too bloody. And
what is he afraid of? Dovetailing off what you just said about Juliet, it'd be really interesting to get another soliloquy that wasn't written is what Friar Lawrence is really afraid of.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting to see.
Because, the only thing we established in the last, podcast, and many people, you see it on the page, is that he's trying to unite these, unite these families. Well, that's over, right? As we said last time. That's not going to happen, at least not for a lot longer now, another generation, because of the death. So that's not on the table. So with that gone, then what are we doing? Right. The only thing I can come up with is he's saving Juliet from stabbing herself to death, but he saves Romeo from stabbing himself to death, right? By kind of smacking him around, get yourself together, man.
And questioning his manhood, by the way, which no one ever has to question Juliet about her womanhood or her strength, but you have to constantly do it with Romeo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He's always on the edge of losing, losing himself.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I'm throwing that out there. That's my nagging question. Should it kind of ruins the play in a way. Like maybe you say, all right, well, that's not a fun question, but maybe the way you articulated it is a good way to say it. Like, what is Friar Lawrence's chip in this game at this point?
Yeah.
Not sure.
My nagging question is, this is a teacher question, a reader question, and I never know where to land on it. Mm-hmm. When I look at the Capulets as parents, and particularly Lord Capulet as a father, how does the play create a sort of set of guidelines for how I'm supposed to judge him? Because I can't judge him like a sensitive, politically correct 21st century dad who can talk about feelings. Like this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
That's right.
But there's some complex, weird things. He tells parents, win her heart. Like there's almost the sense that he has some modern impulses. Right. He calls her awful things at another location, baggage and such. And I want to look at just a couple of little moments when he finds her dead. He does say the sweetest flower in all the field, and all, like some really beautiful moments. But then it's I'm wailing. Let's see. Death is my son-in-law. Death is my heir. Yes. I will die and leave death all. And I just want to get to this other moment. O child, my soul and not my child. Alack, my child is dead. And with my child, my joys are buried. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm super conscious talking to friends like you and talking to kids that I can't read this like it's the current day. I mean, It's not fair.
Right.
That being said, if Juliet is just what I think she is, which is a vehicle to create children, and the notion, and this is a cliche to say, but students need reminding, marriage for love is a new idea. I just started Pride and Prejudice with my seniors, same deal. And that's, 12 or 13. So it's a couple hundred years later. Mm-hmm. Marriage for love, not the point of marriage. The point of marriage is to continue a line.
Right.
That's the point. And to be financially secure.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my nagging question is, are the Capulets' parenting struggles cultural, like relegated to the context? Or are they hints that there's some more substantial brokenness that's affecting Juliet in her life? So I'm wrestling with that.
What do you mean? Some more substantial brokenness in the family?
Well, I just think of a man who talks to Juliet the way he does when he's upset. I've been upset with my 19-year-old daughter plenty. I know you have an angelic disposition, and your wife told me you never get upset.
Right, okay. Right, go on.
So you'll just have to trust me on this, Paul.
Okay, no, all right.
But I've said some things I apologize for later, but I never went to the ad hominem attack mode with my teenager,
Right.
And, the words he uses are property words.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. And then looking at how he talks about her death, I'm wrestling with, I haven't landed one side or the other. I'm just wondering about maybe the thing that stood out about Romeo is there was the only relationship she felt in her life that wasn't transactional.
Yeah. Right.
And that would, if you grew up in a house with parents that talk to you this way, that would be weird. It would be light in the darkness.
Yeah.
But I haven't landed on it. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I like those lines. I reread those. I know what you're talking about. They're striking. And there's another one there that I wrote. I didn't really work this out, but I thought this might be an opportunity for something. Is down at the bottom of page 189, when Juliet comes back and apologizes to her father. This is the first one line that stands out to me is, I think this is the only lie that she tells in the book. Henceforward, am I ever ruled by you? Usually she says things, says things that can be read a couple of different ways.
It's a teenage girl who knows what her father wants to hear. What that is.
Yeah.
All of us that have teenagers know they know the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a few lines later, she tells the subtle line that can be read several different ways that she tells a lot. It's not an out and out lie, which I think that line is when she says, I met the youthful Lord Paris at Lawrence's cell and gave him what becoming love I might, not overstepping the bounds of modesty.
No, I already did that with the other guy.
I should say not, right?
Yeah. There's only so much modesty I can overstep in a day.
She certainly didn't overstep the bounds of modesty. But down at the bottom there, after all this happens, Capulet reads this. I mean, it's funny. He says, I'll play the housewife for this once. He starts scurrying about. We'll move the wedding up. I'll stay up all night and cook and get this show going. He's so
and by
excited.
The way, like he's going to do anything. He's going to yell at a few people.
Yeah. And anything he does will have to be undone.
There are two husbands doing this podcast right now. Just being clear.
Exactly. But he says at the end, I thought of this. This is the thing. I thought, this is that, that New York Times bestseller book, that lasts for a month but has a clever title. My heart is wondrous light, since the same wayward girl is so reclaimed. It sounds like he thinks he's in Jesus' parable of the prodigal son.
Yeah.
You know,
ooh, that's good. That's a good link.
And here my wayward son, has come back home. But it's like a version of that. A, she's not a son, it's a daughter. B, she didn't run off to spoil the family fortune like he thinks, right? Like if you start
he's not metaphorically God the Father at all.
Right, but he thinks he is.
He thinks he is.
So if you play that out in like like a mirror image, I bet that would work. I bet you could take that a little ways.
That's an academic paper that somebody has to write.
Yeah, that might be fun.
Seriously,
and it may really it could be a paper for a student too. But it may also touch on what you're talking about how to read the Father, how he sees himself. Because I think there are some things common to fathers, that you could find, not everybody, but you could still find in the world.
Sure.
That touched down. But to see her as the anti-prodigal is kind of a cool thing. She's actually bringing the family back together, bringing the home back together. Like, is he the prodigal? I'm not sure. Maybe that's some of that brokenness, you're talking about. I don't know.
That's good.
That was just a late thought, that came in. So it might be something to work on.
See, there was stuff in Act 4.
I know. We actually did talk about stuff.
Yeah, there was stuff in it. It's just, it strikes me that the iconic moments that are in every film version and play version, none of them live in Act 4. Not a one. All the other acts have them. The Romeo and Juliet posters in English teachers' classrooms and memes and they all live in Acts 1, 2, 3, and 5. All of them. So it was kind of interesting looking at the act with none of the famous things.
Yeah.
But it's still vital. I mean, it's the thing that propels us to the end.
Yeah, even in the Zeffirelli film, which is the best in my opinion, the scene, we spent time on just isn't there. Juliet just drinks the poison. None of her lines, that development of herself in there, isn't there.
That's good.
Well, I think that gets us through Act 4. Yep. Man, we're ready. We're queued up. There's only 3 scenes left, right?
No.
Act 5.
I wonder what's going to happen at the end, Paul.
I'm not reading ahead. That goes along with my rule of not reading commentators. I have no idea.
It's like when I went to see the Titanic and I told my students, they said, "You're going to see the Titanic?" My first year teaching.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I just want to see how it ends." And about half of them laughed, and the other half had no idea what was going on.
Like, I'm switching sections. Well, all right. Hey, Jay, it was great. See you next time on Act 5, huh?
See you, Paul. Thank you.
All right.